Hello everybody, this is Miss Peachy from your WCA Biology A class, and just doing a bit of an overview for you here on Unit 5, Lesson 3, Photosynthesis, Energy Conversion. So this is really just building on what we talked about in Unit 5, Lesson 2, which was kind of a general overview of photosynthesis. So a lot of this is going to seem somewhat familiar because we did kind of give an overview of that in the previous lesson. So just as a reminder, there is a Google Doc here that's going to kind of go through the main terminology and give you some points that you should probably be focusing on. And that is linked on my website as they have been up to this point. So the first slide in this lesson is just going through your general vocab terms. So you're going to want to study these vocabulary terms and kind of know what they mean. And then we're going to move on to looking at kind of the main points here. So it talks about how photosynthesis is the process by taking light energy, water, and carbon dioxide and making sugars and oxygen. And that's kind of the general, purpose of photosynthesis. It's able to produce sugars from inorganic material and energy from sunlight. And the chemical equation here for photosynthesis is 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus light is converted to C6H12O6 plus 6O2. So it's basically telling you here that we need 6 parts carbon dioxide, 6 parts water, and sunlight, and through the chemical process of photosynthesis that is converted to a molecule of sugar, and this is a glucose sugar here, plus 6 oxygens. So that's the chemical process of photosynthesis. Where does photosynthesis take place? It takes place in the chloroplasts, which are found in plants. And within the chloroplast, there are specific structures of the chloroplast that are responsible for different portions of photosynthesis. So you've got these little pancakes that look like stacks of a pancake, I guess, and we call these stroma. Oh, I'm sorry. They're called thylakoids. I misread that here. So the thylakoids are stacked up together. A group of thylakoids is referred to as a grana. And if you talk about multiple stacks, they're multiple grana. The fluid that kind of surrounds the thylakoid here is called the stroma. So we have the stacks of pancakes, which are the thylakoids, and the fluid that surrounds it, which is called the stroma. And different parts of photosynthesis takes place in different portions of the chloroplast. So the first part we're going to talk about is something called the light dependent stage, or the light reactions, or the light dependent reactions. And they're taking place in the thylakoids themselves. So we're kind of zooming on in here to what's going on inside the thylakoids, inside those little pancakes. So think of it as not solid like a pancake, it's kind of like a hollow flattened disc. So there's a membrane, which is like what my fingers are representing here. And inside the thylakoid is kind of a fluid as well. So there's actually a membrane, which is a semi-permeable membrane that separates the outside of the thylakoid from the inside of the thylakoid. And so the first part is called the light-dependent reactions. And this is where kind of some of the energy carrier molecules are generated. So in the light-dependent reactions, we have two different energy-carrying molecules, NADPH and ATP, which are made in the light-dependent reactions. And again, I think we talked about this in the previous lesson as well. So two kind of lesser energy molecules, NADP plus and ADP, are there, and then they are added to make the higher energy carrying molecules of NADPH and ATP. That happens in the light dependent reactions. Before that even can occur, however, we have water, which is taken in part of the equation. See, we have the 6 molecules of water. Those molecules of water are split apart by photons, and they are split apart into hydrogen and oxygen because water is H2O. So this water is split apart into hydrogen and oxygen. These oxygen molecules are given off by the plant. They are actually released through the little pores in the leaves of the plants called stomata. But the hydrogen is actually used to create kind of a little bit of a charge gradient. That's kind of a fancy word, I know, but basically, if we think about that little membrane, that little pancake disc, right? So if we have more hydrogens inside the disc than we have outside the disc, that creates an area of where it's not equal, right? So there's a charge differential. We have more positives in one side than we have on the other side. And those hydrogen ions are going to want to escape and get out of inside that disk to be able to equalize the concentration. And they do that through something called a protein, which is ATP synthase. So let me kind of draw you a little picture here so we can kind of get you an idea. So we've got that little thylakoid disc, right? You got the water molecules that were split up. Oxygen was given off. Now we've got a higher concentration of hydrogen ions inside than outside. A lot of these guys are inside. There's not very many outside. So it's uneven, and nature does not like that at all. So these guys need to get out to be able to even out. If we only have a couple of these guys out here, for example, then what we have is we have an uneven situation. It's not in a state of equilibrium. So we have a little doorway, and this doorway is a protein, and it's called ATP synthase. So it's actually an enzyme that creates ATP. It's hard for me to write on here, so hang on. I do have a pen. I'm going to try using that actually. Oh, no, I can't do it because I'm on the wrong monitor. But ATP synthase, I'm just going to write it like that. Okay. I'm sure I spelled that wrong. Okay. And anyways, these little purple hydrogen ions, they're going to escape through ATP synthase in order to be able to equalize the concentration of ATP inside and outside. When they do that, they're releasing energy. And that energy allows this ADP out here that extra energy allows that ADP to add another phosphate group to it. Okay, and becomes ATP instead. So it's basically like this has a lot of potential energy. And when we release the potential energy, that is then used to create more chemical energy. And that chemical energy is found in this ATP that gets created here. I'm going to actually go ahead and clear that up. We end up with ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which has more energy than ADP. It is created, again, by shuttling those hydrogens from inside the thylakoid to outside the thylakoid through that doorway, which is known as ATP synthase. So that's part of the light-dependent reactions. So it creates ATP here. Okay. The other thing that is generated is an energy-carrying molecule called NADPH. And remember, we have those hydrogen ions that we just pumped out of the thylakoid membrane into the outer part of it, right? Those are then attached to the NADP+. So if you add the hydrogen ions to that guy, it becomes NADPH. So to kind of summarize everything again, we have our thylakoid. We have a buildup of hydrogen ions inside. Because water was split initially. We had this water molecule over here, and it was split up by the energy from the sun. Came and split up that water, releasing, oopsies, releasing oxygen. Bye, oxygen. Thank you for helping us breathe. And then shuttling those hydrogen ions inside of the thylakoid membrane. Some hydrogens, by the way, get pushed down the line through two more little proteins that are embedded into the thylakoid membrane called photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. So those hydrogen ions kind of move down through photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. And those attach to NADP plus. Oh, I guess I can't do that. I can erase the 1. They attach to NADP plus and create that NADPH right here. Right? That's one thing the hydrogen ions do. The other hydrogen ions that get shuttled inside the thylakoid, they make their way out of the inside through another doorway called ATP synthase. So that's our enzyme. They move through ATP synthase, and their energy is used to create ATP from ADP. So we started with ADP, and then they add an extra phosphate group to it. They just use that energy to kind of like move that phosphate group over and attach it to the ADP, making ATP. So at the end of the day, our light reactions, our light dependent reactions, these are light dependent here, they create ATP and NADPH. That's what they do. Okay. And you can see in this picture here, kind of a schematic of that. Light comes in, oxygen goes out, water comes in, oxygen goes out, and both NADPH and ATP are created. They leave the thylakoid and enter into the stroma, which is that fluid that surrounds the thylakoid. And there, the ATP and NADPH, the energy that they're carrying, because remember, I call them energy carrying molecules, the energy they carry is used to make sugar, the carbon dioxide, CO2, plus the hydrogen from the NADPH is used to make C6H12O6, makes sugar. And then the ADP and the NADP plus move back into the thylakoid, and the process starts all over again, and you split another water, and you have more hydrogens that get shuttled around, and the whole process kind of starts over again. So the two energy carrying molecules, ATP and NADPH, are created in the light independent reactions, which happen in the thylakoid. They move to the stroma, where the hydrogen and the energy that they're carrying is used along with the carbon dioxide to make sugar, and then they're reduced back to ADP and NADP plus, and they're cycled back to the thylakoid to start all over again. Hopefully it kind of makes sense. It's kind of a big cycle. This is our light dependent, because guess what? We need light for that to happen. Over here, those are called light independent, also known as the Kelvin cycle. You do not need light for that to happen. Here we're just making energy carrying molecules. Here we're using those energy carrying molecules and carbon dioxide to make sugar. So that is kind of in a nutshell the process of photosynthesis, the different players that are involved in photosynthesis. If you have any questions, please let me know. I would suggest coming to my live lesson in this one as well, because this can be kind of a tricky concept. Thank you all. Have a great day.